The Splay 101. So 3 things to like with this shoe. Number 1, it's the appearance. This is one of the most aesthetic barefoot shoes I have seen as of late. This is a model that you can rock casually out for a coffee shop run, to run errands, to the office. They have a nice leather construction, some suede overlays, so they look really good. And honestly, this leather is pretty easy to clean. I was able to wipe mine down the other day when they got a little bit dirty from a rainy day. So in the context of the first pro with this shoe, I think the appearance is pretty awesome, and they have a lot of great colorways. I am a sucker for this white colorway and gum, and I know a lot of folks on my Instagram have also agreed with me. Although, if you have a different colorway, which colorway do you actually think is the best in this model? The second pro that I have with this model is the width. So the 4-foot into the midfoot width of this shoe is awesome. So this model doesn't have a ton of taper to it, and you get a ton of width through the 4-foot. I have an E to double E width foot, and this model fits me really well. I have ample room in this shoe. Even with thicker socks on, I find that I have width to splay my toes, and they feel pretty dang comfortable for all day wear. Now that said, because we do have a lower volume upper in this shoe, and I'll talk about that in my cons, I would say probably go with thinner no-show socks in this shoe. I wear the Muddy and Zagonia ones from Amazon. They're cheap, they're breathable, and they are very minimalist in the context of not showing when wearing the shoe. The third pro with this model is this full rubber outsole and its grip. This model's outsole grips really well, and I like the tread patterning. It should last you a while, and so if you're a city dweller and you want additional protection, the 3D wrap with the outsole of this shoe is also pretty dang good for helping to protect this model's upper, which I think is great for days when you're going to be navigating rain, mud, etc., or even commuting in a dirty city like New York. I lived that New York City commute life, and that subway is not the cleanest. So I feel you if you are an urban dweller looking for a good barefoot shoe for business casual wear. But now that said, let's talk about a couple of cons with the Splay 101. So 2 cons that I have with the Splay 101 is number 1, it has a low volume through the 4-foot into the midfoot here. So if you have a high instep or a thicker foot, this is likely not going to be your best casual shoe. If you want a leather model that has a bit more upper volume, I would say look into the Icarus Ascent Gen 2. That has a bit more space to the upper. This model, again, is pretty dang low profile, especially for my folks out there with a thicker 4-foot. You'll really notice this, I think, with the suede overlay, and because it's leather and suede, I don't think the shoe is going to break in and give you a ton of extra room. So keep that in mind if you have a high instep or thicker foot. The second con that I have with this shoe is there's no tongue gusset. And so what I noticed with this model is when I am putting them on, this is a model you're gonna have to unlace and lace just to make sure you're not ripping any part of this leather or the tongue, etc. But if you're not tightening the shoe to where you have a little bit of pressure with this lace on the top of the foot, this tongue can slide at times. It moves a tiny bit. It's one of those little things that doesn't really bother the performance of the shoe in the context of walking and whatnot. But if you are big on just having that tongue lay flat, that is something I think you might notice from time to time. I notice this most when I'm wearing my super thin socks, and so when they're a lot more low profile, I'll start to feel this move a little bit on me, and so you will want to have a bit of pressure there. And if you're somebody who likes to wear your daily wear shoes looser, that could be something that bothers you. Again, it's not really going to tank the performance of the shoe. It's just one of those little nitpicks, and I feel like if they did like a nice gusset in the shoe, or even kind of a gusset with those nice elastic straps on each side to where it's not overbearing and it keeps that tongue secure, I think that would be the move. But now let's talk about the performance of the Splay 101. Shoe and fitness lovers, if you want to get emails every single week that are formatted similar to the Morning Brew, that are packed with a ton of information on training and footwear, you want to subscribe. I have a link down below or on screen here if you're watching on TV or tablet. I will never spam you. The email list I try to make as informative as possible, but all that said, back to the review. So to chat on the performance of the Splay 101, I'll discuss how this shoe does for walking and casual wear, and I'll discuss my thoughts on different climates and seasons. So when it comes to walking and daily wear, I have thoroughly enjoyed this shoe, and that is because the width, the grip, and the boot construction of this model. This model has a nice minimalist feel on the feet, even though it's made out of leather and suede. So for example, the Icarus Ascent Gen 2 works great for more higher volume feet, thicker feet, but it does feel pretty dang heavy at times. This model doesn't have that same feel, and so even when compared to Zero Shoes models that come in leather, this model is kind of similar, and similar to Feel Grounds as well regarding its overall weight. The internal construction of the shoe is also a little bit softer than some of those other models, so it is a little bit more forgiving on the feet, which I personally like, especially for no-show sock use. In this model, you also have a nice level of grip with this outsole tread, and with this rubber, it has a nice level of traction to it. It's not that kind of leather that's very dense. It's gonna have a little bit of slip issues, so I think this will be a good leather for all types of surfaces. I have yet to have any slip issues in the shoe, even when navigating concrete and like those little like bumpy textures on the end of sidewalks that can get kind of slippery in rain. I didn't have any issues in this model the other day, and I think that is because you do have this lug traction, but also just this rubber is pretty dang grippy once again. You also have this 3D outsole wrap, which I really like. like. And then I also like that the leather is pretty easy to clean. Now I will say with this suede overlay up here, this is something that can get dirty and it's a little bit tougher to clean. So keep that in mind. I wish this would be replaced with a different material just because suede I think can sometimes look a little bit clunky. It looks a little bit dated and it can get a little bit dirty. So just food for thought there. If you're wearing these in super dirty settings and you have the white colorways, try to keep your toes up because this can get a little bit dirtier, whereas the leather you can kind of wipe down and that's not really an issue. Now, when it comes to multi-season wear, I feel like this should be a 4-season shoe. Now, obviously it is leather, so on super hot days, you might have a little bit of foot sweat in the shoe, but if you're wearing them in the office and whatnot, you should be fine. And this leather is heavy enough, I think, for colder climates. I have been rocking the shoe this summer, so it has been like 94 in Denver over the last few days, and the shoe has remained relatively comfortable. Again, it's leather, so you will notice them getting a little bit hot, but they're not as heavy as some of the other leather shoes I do wear. So overall, this should be a nice 4-season shoe, and I think when it comes to its peak season use, I feel like spring and fall will be the best seasons with this shoe. It's light, it's sporty, it's casual, and its weight isn't so heavy or so light to where you're gonna have extreme feelings when it's super hot or super cold. When it comes to the price of the Splay 101, you can expect to pay $101. Honestly, I feel like that price point is really fair for this shoe, especially for folks who want these shoes for 3 and 4 season use. All right, so now let's answer the question, who should buy the Splay 101? Number one, I think if you're a city dweller and you want a shoe for business casual use, this can be an awesome option. They have a lot of great colorways, and with this all white colorway, it has a very minimalist look and feel to it, and it doesn't look super barefooty or clown-like like some of the other barefoot shoes I think can look when it comes to business casual use. The second context is if you have lower volume feet and you want your daily wear shoes and more business casual shoes to hug your feet really well, that's another context where I think the shoe can make a lot of sense. And then number three, if you're somebody who lives in a city and you're constantly navigating slicker surfaces, that's where I think the shoe can actually excel. Now, this isn't necessarily like an outright anti-slip outsole, but with the tread and with its overall grip, this can be a really good daily wear shoe for both work settings and commute settings where you might be navigating slicker surfaces. Now, who shouldn't buy this shoe? Number one, if you are somebody who has a high volume or thicker foot, pass on this model. Number two, if you're somebody that obviously wants a full leather shoe, you might not love the suede overlays in this model. That is something that I think kind of hinders this shoe's ability to be more of like that premium leather looking shoe. It's a little bit more casual than some of the other pure leather models, but overall the Splay 101 I thought has been a stellar shoe, especially for more business casual and daily wear use. When it comes to sizing and fit in the Splay 101, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this model. Now for context here, I have an E to double E with foot and I have a normal arch. My foot feels really comfortable in this model. My arch is not so high and my foot is not so thick to where I really notice this, and I can wear this shoe a little bit looser or tighter, and the laces don't run super long, which I also like. Now that said, if you have that thicker foot, once again, or you have a high instep, this might not be the best shoe for you, especially for my folks who want a little bit more space up here in the forefoot. And then that said, if you have 3E or 4E with feet or even wider, I would say go up a half size in this shoe. Again, I have an E to double E with foot, and I think I have just enough room at the end of the toe box to keep the shoe comfortable with different types of socks, but I do think for wider feet or exceptionally wide feet at that, sizing up a half size is a safe bet. So when it comes to the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the Splay 101, for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 11.95 ounces. The heel to toe drop of this shoe is 0 millimeters, and this model does have a thin foam removable insole, and the internal construction of the shoe is finished. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Splay 101. Up here on the toe box, you have a suede overlay. So I don't mind this from an aesthetic point of view, but I do worry that this suede is gonna get super stained over time. Mine has been good thus far, but it's definitely a concern with some of the lighter colorways. Also with suede, you can run into like quality control issues, so it can start to look a little bit frayed. Mine honestly looks pretty good, but I wouldn't be surprised if some folks have that issue with this model. Looking at the upper construction, you have a light leather upper that extends from the forefoot into the midfoot back here with some Splay branding here on the lateral side. This also wraps around to the medial side. Then you have that suede overlay back here on the boot, and you have some Splay branding back here on the boot. Now with this leather, it does have a softer mesh internal, so it's not gonna be leather on skin if you like to go sockless here and there in your shoes like me. I know that's a little bit gross, especially in leather models, but don't at me, okay? It's just my thing. Looking at the midfoot of this shoe, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 core eyelets that go up. With the tongue, it's built with a padded mesh. You also have some Splay branding there. and you have a loop here for additional security. Again, you're going to want to have a little bit of tension in these laces if you hate your tongue moving at all, because this tongue does not have a gusset, so it can slide from time to time. With this model's outsole, you have a grippy outsole that extends the entirety of the shoe. You get a nice 360 wrap here, and then looking at the tread of the shoe, you have this triangle-like tread patterning. It's nice and grippy. You have some Splay branding there in the midfoot, and the sole is very flexible. So if you're worried about losing ground contact and whatnot, I wouldn't necessarily stress that with this shoe. Again, you do have a thin foam removable insole, and the internal portion of this shoe is finished. Overall though, that kind of wraps up the nuts and bolts of this shoe's construction. It's relatively simple in nature, but I think that's one of those things that makes this shoe subtly great. But if you have additional questions on the construction of this model, drop a comment down below. All right, so now would I buy the Splay 101 again? I definitely would. This has been one of my more surprising barefoot shoe purchases as of late. I have thoroughly enjoyed this shoe. I like the outsole grip, the gum construction here, and the leather isn't so heavy to where it's uncomfortable. It's an easy model to break in, and I think it's gonna be good for multi-season use. If you have additional questions on the Splay 101, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.